The call came on a Tuesday morning while I stood in my kitchen, watching steam rise from my coffee. My lawyer's voice was calm, too calm. "Natalie, we have a problem with your father's estate." My hand froze halfway to my mouth. "What kind of problem?" He paused. "Your sister filed probate documents last week. She's claiming sole beneficiary status." The mug slipped from my fingers, shattering against the tile. Coffee spread across the floor like spilled truth. "That's impossible," I whispered. "Dad left everything to both of us equally." Another pause, heavier this time. "Not according to the will she submitted. This one names only her." My father had died 3 months ago. Cancer, quick and cruel. At his bedside, he'd squeezed my hand and said, "Everything's handled. You and Claire will be fine." I'd believed him. Claire had handled the funeral arrangements, the estate meetings, all the paperwork. She'd looked so composed in her black dress, greeting relatives, organizing flowers. I thought she was being responsible. Now I understood she'd been rearranging more than the service. I called Claire immediately. She answered on the third ring, her voice bright and casual. "Hey, Nat, what's up?" My throat tightened. "My lawyer just told me you filed probate documents." Silence stretched between us. Then she laughed, light and dismissive. "Oh, that, yeah, I had to move things forward. Dad's accounts were getting complicated." "You claimed you're the sole beneficiary," I said slowly. "Why would you do that?" Her tone shifted, becoming sharper. "Because I am." Had changed his will 6 months before he died. "You were always traveling for work, never around. He wanted someone reliable to handle things." My pulse hammered in my ears. "That's a lie. Dad wouldn't cut me out." "He didn't cut you out," she said smoothly. "He just recognized who actually took care of him. Look, I'll send you some money once everything settles. Maybe 20,000, that should help." 20,000, from an estate worth $500,000. "Claire, I want to see that will." She hung up without answering. I stood in my kitchen, surrounded by broken ceramic and spreading coffee, feeling something inside me crack just as cleanly. Dad and I had talked every Sunday morning. He'd never mentioned changing anything, never acted distant or disappointed. When I flew home for his last birthday, he'd pulled me aside and said, "The house, the accounts, everything's split evenly between you girls. It's all documented." I'd hugged him, grateful he'd made things clear. Now Claire was erasing me from his final wishes, and she expected me to accept $20,000 like a tip. I called my lawyer back. "I need to see the will she submitted," he sighed. "I'm already pulling it. Give me 2 hours." Those 2 hours felt like days. I cleaned up the coffee, swept the ceramic shards, and stared at my phone. Finally, it buzzed, an email with an attached PDF. I opened it with shaking hands. The will looked official, typed, dated, signed. My father's signature sat at the bottom, neat and familiar, except it wasn't quite right. The loops were too tight, the pressure too heavy. Dad had arthritis in his final months. His signature had become lighter, shakier. This one looked strong, deliberate, practiced. I zoomed in on the notary stamp. Something felt wrong. I took screenshots and sent them to 3 different notaries, asking if the stamp looked legitimate. 2 responded within the hour. Both said the same thing. The registration number didn't match any active notary in our state. Claire had forged it. She'd faked Dad's signature, invented a notary stamp, and submitted it to the court like it was truth. My hands trembled as I forwarded everything to my lawyer. He called immediately. "This is fraud," he said quietly. "If we can prove it, she'll face criminal charges." I thought about Dad, about his Sunday phone calls, about the way he'd looked at both of us at Christmas and said, "My 2 girls, I'm so proud." "Prove it," I told him. My lawyer's name was Vincent Hall, and he'd handled Dad's original estate planning. He knew the real will existed because he'd helped draft it. "I have the signed original in my files," he explained. "But Claire's version has a later date. The court will assume your father changed his mind unless we can prove her document is fake." We spent the next week gathering evidence. Vincent pulled the original will. We hired a handwriting expert who confirmed the signature on Claire's version didn't match Dad's natural writing. We contacted the notary whose stamp she'd copied. He testified he'd never notarized any document for my father. Claire's fraud was falling apart, piece by piece, but she wasn't backing down. When Vincent filed a formal challenge, she responded with her own lawyer. A man named Todd Preston who specialized in estate litigation and had a reputation for playing dirty. He sent a letter claiming Dad had been of sound mind when he updated his will. The letter also suggested I was contesting because I was bitter about being the less favored daughter. That phrase stung more than it should have. Growing up, Claire had always been the golden child. Perfect grades, perfect manners, perfect smile. I was the dreamer who chose art school over business, who traveled instead of settling down. Mom used to sigh and say, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" After Mom died when I was 23, Dad became my anchor. He never compared us. Never made me feel small. When I got my first gallery showing, he flew across the country to attend. When Claire got married, he walked her down the aisle with tears in his eyes. He loved us equally, I knew he did. Now she was rewriting that love, turning it into something conditional, something I'd lost through absence. Vincent scheduled a meeting with Claire's lawyer. I insisted on attending. We met in a conference room downtown, all glass and cold light. Claire sat across from me, wearing a cream blouse and diamond earrings I didn't recognize. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Todd Preston opened a folder and slid papers across the table. "My client is willing to settle. She'll give you $50,000 if you drop the challenge." I looked at Claire. $50,000 from an estate worth $500,000. She finally met my gaze. "It's generous, Nat. More than you deserve after abandoning Dad." The words hit like a slap. I didn't abandon anyone. I called him every week. I visited every holiday. "You weren't there," she said coldly. "When he needed help with medications, with doctor appointments, with everything, where were you? I handled it all." "Because you live 20 minutes away," I shot back. "I offered to take family leave. Dad said no. He didn't want me disrupting my career." Todd cleared his throat. "This is exactly why Mr. Morrison changed his will. He recognized who made sacrifices." I turned to Vincent. "Show them." Vincent pulled out the handwriting analysis, the notary testimony, the original will. He laid each document on the table methodically. "Your client forged a legal document," he said quietly. "The signature doesn't match. The notary stamp is fake. If we go to court, she won't just lose the estate. She'll face criminal fraud charges." Claire's face drained of color. Todd gathered the papers quickly, scanning them. His jaw tightened. "We need a moment," he said. They stepped into the hallway. Through the glass walls, I watched Claire gesture frantically while Todd shook his head. When they returned, Todd's expression had shifted. "We'd like to propose a different settlement." Vincent leaned back. "We're listening. Full estate split 50-50 as the original will stated, plus your legal fees covered. In exchange, you don't press criminal charges." I looked at Claire. She stared at the table, her perfect composure crumbling. "And she admits what she did," I added. "In writing." Todd started to object, but Claire spoke first. "Fine." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I'll write it." Vincent drafted the agreement that afternoon. Claire signed it the next morning, along with a notarized confession detailing the forgery. Reading her admission felt surreal. "I, Claire Morrison, acknowledge that I falsified documents related to the estate of Harold Morrison. I forged his signature and created a fraudulent notary stamp to claim sole beneficiary status. I did this knowingly and without legal right." Her handwriting looked small, defeated. Nothing like the confident script I remembered from birthday cards and wedding invitations. The estate was released 2 weeks later. $500,000 divided equally, just as Dad had intended. But when the money hit my account, I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow. Vincent called to congratulate me. "You did the right thing," he said. "Your father would be proud." I wasn't sure about that. Dad had hated conflict. He'd spent his life keeping peace between us. I drove to Dad's house the next day. Claire had been living there since his death, but the settlement required her to move out. The key still worked. Inside, everything looked the same. His reading chair by the window, his coffee mug on the kitchen counter, the photos on the mantel showing both of us at different ages, smiling together. I found what I was looking for in his office, a leather journal he'd kept during his final months. The entries were short, shaky, written between treatments. "Claire came by today. She seems stressed about money. Worried about her. Nat called from Seattle. Her gallery show sold out. So proud." Another entry dated 2 months before he died. "Talked to Vincent today, made sure the will is clear. Both girls split everything equally. No favorites, never favorites." The last entry was written a week before his death. "Don't have much time left. Hope I taught them to look after each other. That's all that matters." I closed the journal carefully, tears blurring the pages. Claire never apologized beyond the legal document. She moved to another state, took her half of the inheritance, and disappeared from my life. I sold Dad's house and donated his belongings to charity, keeping only the journal and a photo of the 3 of us from my college graduation. Sometimes I wonder if I should have pressed charges, if letting her walk away was weakness or mercy. But Dad's last entry keeps echoing. "Hope I taught them to look after each other." He did teach us. Claire just forgot. I opened a small community art studio with part of the inheritance, nomming it after Dad. On the wall, I hung his favorite quote, painted in careful letters. Integrity is doing the right thing even when no one is watching. Every time someone asks about the name, I tell them about my father, how he loved his daughters equally, how he taught me fairness matters more than keeping peace, and how sometimes the people closest to you will test everything you believe about family. The studio thrives now. Students come and go, learning, creating, building something honest. And in the quiet moments between classes, I think about Claire, wondering if she ever reads Dad's journal entries in her mind, wondering if 50,000 pieces of silver feel heavier than she expected. In the end, justice didn't come with shouting or revenge, it came with truth. Claire walked away with her half, but she'll carry the weight of her choices forever. And Natalie? She chose integrity over chaos, the kind of victory that lasts longer than money ever could. Because on this channel, karma doesn't rush, but it never forgets. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another twist. This is Paybackden, where every wrong finds the ending it truly deserves. If you